because I'm really happy that you came out. And I just should acknowledge too that I'm here partly under the funding and support of the Yukon government and also the Yukon Trappers Association, of which I'm a member, and they got me a discount on shipping all of this art down from the Yukon and around the place, down to Winnipeg next, and then back home. So, yeah, lots of people go together to make artwork in our communities, and we're really grateful. I want to thank Karen and all the members of Norva who've been really helpful and supportive, the volunteers who were here yesterday and helping us work out the PowerPoint kinks and all. But yeah, so if people are wandering in part way, that's fine with me. We'll just welcome everybody as they come, and thanks for coming out. It's really nice to see you. We weren't sure what would happen, but here we are. All of you have had a chance to look around and see the show. The name of it is Honor and Reverence for the Land, the Animals, and the Work of Women and Men. And I have to credit my sister Barb over here for helping me come up with the title. I had to figure out a title and wasn't sure what the show was all about. I knew it was about my beaded photographs, and it was about my wearable art, and what was the theme that connected it all. And you know, at first I was thinking it's about women's work, beading, sewing, spinning, knitting. Not that men don't do that work too, they do, lots of them, but it's traditionally been women's work. And are you okay if I leave this on? Yeah. I won't try to come too close. So, yeah, really honoring that work, and that work is often unpaid, it's underpaid, it's, and then I was thinking, okay, well, it's not just about women's work, it's also, most of the trappers are men, and women trap too, and families trap as a family and choose a lifestyle of trapping, and I've had a chance to get to know a bunch of trappers since I started sewing with the fur, and in spite of some mixed feelings about how we use animals in our world, I kind of fell in love with the furs themselves, and people who want to live that lifestyle, want to live way out in the bush, and you know, are combining modern technology also with traditional dog sleds and wood fires, and living bit more off the land than most of us do anymore. So it's about all of that, like really honoring our work, the work that brings us joy, money, something to do with our hands when we're binge watching Netflix, you know, something that is producing things for our families and ourselves to keep warm in the winter, all of that. And then it was, you know, when I looked at the pictures, I thought, what is it that, you know, connects the pictures? Is there any connection, or are they all just pictures that I like, or that I felt drawn to do the beading on? Because I'm not drawn to doing the beading on every picture, and I'll talk about that a little bit more later, how you decide, and I'll talk about it more in the workshops, which are tomorrow and the following Saturday, if any of you get inspired to join. Apparently there's still a few seats available, so love to see you at that if you want to come. So what it seemed to me was that the pictures fell into a number of themes, and it may not be readily apparent to you, but if you look around, maybe you'll see the connections, or maybe you'll see something else, or would have put them together a different way. But for those of you who know Rhonda Darling, Gwen especially, and many others of you who would know Rhonda's a friend of mine for 50 years, of course was part of our family when Marg was married to her brother until his untimely death. And you know, I was house sitting for Rhonda, and she had a big house on a piece of land where I built on in the late 70s, and anyway, there's a million connections. So I was out at her house and spreading everything out and seeing how do things fit together, how are we going to how are we going to put up this show so that it makes some kind of sense? And to me, if to nobody else. Anyway, so it seemed like these pictures over here were all about canyons and mountains. And I live in the mountains in Whitehorse in the Yukon, and have traveled to lots of other mountainous places, and I love canyons. We have a wonderful canyon right in Whitehorse. We've been to other canyons elsewhere, and you can see canyons in Oman and canyons in Sicily, and various mountains. So that was one theme, and that's obviously a big theme because it's got the most pictures in it. So we kind of are often attracted to making art about where we live. The one at the far end there is, it came to be about fauna, animals, birds, which is not usually what I take pictures of, but and I had to sneak in the Christmas one, the Christmas stocking holder caribou there in the window of my house, you know. Just because I love that picture so much. So it snuck into the fauna section by virtue of the caribou stocking holders. And this one was about flowers and fauna. And this last one over here, you can't see all of the pictures, but this one was about water. And this one is about boats, because apparently I love taking pictures about boats, and have many pictures of boats that are very special to me from different travels that I've done in my life, and some from, you know, Venice, the Yukon, Oman, Florence, and Venice is impossible to not fall in love with the boats in. So anyway, that's kind of where the title came from, in case you were wondering. Yeah, and all the work that it takes to you know, fish and take people around as tourists and do anything. So, the idea of doing beadwork on photography, which is, as far as I know, I haven't seen it before. I haven't seen anyone doing it. I did see a picture Barb showed me of a woman who was doing combining beads with painting. And that was pretty cool. I just saw that last night for the first time. But I haven't seen anyone doing beadwork on photography, and it actually, the idea of it came to me in a dream when I was in Turkey. I just dreamt this concept of, you gotta do beadwork on your photography. And I woke up with that thought in my mind, and it took a couple of years for me to figure out how to actually do it. But I think, in looking back, I have, for the last 11, 12 years, I've been, aside from during the pandemic, going twice a year to the Middle East and Turkey, and I've been doing that for work, teaching family therapy programs over there. So I do that. That was kind of part of my day job. And I was also did quite a bit of traveling in places. I just tagged on to those trips, so going to other places and you know, just spending a week or 2 weeks or whatever time I had to see these places. And one of the things I noticed was how beautiful the ornamentation was on a lot of the common everyday things, and it showed up a lot in the scarves. Is where I first kind of saw it, you know. And you can take a look at these. This is from Turkey, and the kind of beads that are on here, and the tiny little crocheting that would, you know, I wouldn't have the patience to do, even though I crochet. But you know, not only do they put the you know, the symbols of their country into the fabric and that, but the ornamentation and this elaborate crochet work and beadwork is traditional in Turkey, on like towels that you would give people at their wedding, or you know how in the Western culture we used to embroider and do lace work and cut work and all these kind of things on our trousseaux, for those of us who as young girls dreamed of a traditional wedding. And so, but in Turkey and the Middle East, this kind of, you know, beadwork that you can, I don't know, can you all see it? You can see it well enough. You can come and look after. You know, the incredible amount of work and time that people go in to make something just that much more beautiful than it already is. And, you know, women are selling these in the markets and things like that for nothing. You know, $5 or $10 of our money, and you think the hours that went into that. So that was kind of the concept of the women's work. And yeah, so I don't need to show you all the rest of these, but just the different kinds of styles. And this scarf from Bahrain, which is where I started in my Middle Eastern adventures, and just, you know, fell in love with this elaborately beaded scarf, and it's really heavy. And actually my daughter's getting married this summer, and she talked me into buying this beaded dress. It's just beautiful, and I think it will go well with this shawl, but it weighs 7 pounds. It came in the mail, I couldn't believe it, and I thought, oh God, I'm going to be trudging around at the end of the night. Anyway, yeah, so I've always been attracted to shiny things. I like beaded things and, you know, glitter. So the being drawn to beads, and beads all over the world, the Indian, East Indian kind of clothing that is beaded and gold thread and all this kind of thing, I just find incredibly beautiful. And I had to cancel my first trip to India just because of the pandemic. So I was on my way over there in 2020, and everything shut down like 2 weeks before. So it's on my wish list for the future. So that's where it started. Tulips, in case you're wondering what that picture is doing there, is the flower of Istanbul, and they have a big tulip festival there in the spring, in March. But ornamentation, the carpets in the mosque, and this is also in Turkey. Just that, you know, most churches you go into in the Western world, they either are stone or wood or boring beige carpet, you know. No offense to anyone who worships in a place, or, you know, but this is not what we often go for in our carpets. The dishes, the pastries, everything is just a little bit more. Don't look at the plastic cups of water. But you know, the china, the dishes, this is gold ornamentation on an ancient boat in the Naval Museum in Istanbul. And the pomegranate is the fruit, the symbol of Turkey. This is high fashion, modern clothing that is just, you know, it's dyed fur and it's elaborate colors, and the henna on the hands. People do for wedding ceremonies and engagement ceremonies, and also just for fun. These are one of my students there. Is a wonderful henna artist. She just painted her hands for fun. Part of the Tulip Festival, the ceilings with the enamel work and in the buildings. It's one of my Indian students in her traditional burra clothing that they wear. A little coffee break, you know. So, I had this dream. I'm thinking for a couple of years about how am I going to make it work, because everything I thought of, I know some photographs you see when they're printed on a like photographic paper, and then there's a mat and sometimes a photograph spills over onto the mat. Sometimes there's ornamentation on the mat that enhances the picture. There's cut work, people who can do laser cutting with machines or whatever, however they do that. You know, there's different things like that, or I was thinking maybe you could glue the beads on, and then I thought I'm way too messy for that. I'm not a tidy, detailed person that would do a good job of that, so. And I was thinking maybe you could do it beadwork on the frame, you could get a beading loom and bead the frame, maybe that would do it, and then no. Anyway, when I moved back to the Yukon, I've kind of, for those of you, I don't know if you all know, I was born in Flin Flon and lived here many different times in my life. As have my two sisters here who are still around, most of you know. When I came back to the Yukon, I kind of established in my mind for about 8 years at that point that I actually was an artist, and that I could call myself that without going like this and, you know, feeling that it was overstating what I like to do for fun. And so I applied to be included in an artistic event in the Yukon called Created in the Canyon. And they, each year, when it was possible, they choose six artists, and they can be musicians, visual artists, writers, any kind of artist, to hang out in Miles Canyon, which that's the water of Miles Canyon from standing on the cliff. Here, basalt rock looking down into the water, and the fireweed are growing out the side of the canyon.
Oh.
And this is the Yukon River flowing through there, where the miners in the gold rush days went through the Whitehorse Rapids and on their way to Dawson City for the gold rush. So Miles Canyon is a very historical place for us in the Yukon. And also that one over there, the second one from the left on the bottom row, it looks like kind of a statue of a goddess. That's a side view of some of the canyon there. So it's very gorgeous, and you know, a lot of people get a lot of inspiration there. So the idea for the show was that these 6 artists would go there and spend 2 days and would do their art there. Like you'd set up a tarp for you, had a table, whatever you needed to do your artwork, or you'd take your guitar or your whatever it was, and you'd spend the 2 days. And people, it's a tourist attraction in Whitehorse too. People can go and wander around the trails, and even like local people who are not tourists, there's all kinds of trails they mountain bike on and walk on near the canyon. So a lot of people come by and they go check out what are these artists doing. So just before this weekend of Created in the Canyon 2016, we went on a tour with the parks people to an old place that serviced the gold miners called Canyon City. And it used to be a little community there with stores, and the miners could rest after coming down the river, their travels from the Pacific Ocean. And as we were walking there, it was just raining hard. And everywhere in the forest there, you know how sometimes on spruce and pine trees, the raindrops just hang on the needles, right? And it's like you're in a kind of a crystal forest. I don't know, it was just magical anyway. And I was looking at that, and I thought, it has to be right on the picture somehow. And I'm going to figure it out this weekend. I'm at Created in the Canyon. So what I did was, I just this is just a piece of canvas I had around at home for painting, and on my printer, I just printed off a photograph that I had taken that I liked, and I sewed the paper onto the canvas, and I thought, can I actually do this? So that's what I was playing at during this weekend, where you're going out there for inspiration. And so as I started to put the beads on, and I thought, okay, I put them up there, and then I thought, well, no, that's not where the beads should go. And anyway, it ended up being more like this picture, and the beads ended up going around the edge of here. So I've taken a few different tries at this picture, and after the Created in the Canyon exhibition, we had to produce 3 pieces of art for an exhibition a couple of months later. So I ordered some of these canvases and got some ready and put it into the exhibition. So that was the first time me or anyone else had actually seen them. This dream vision I'd had turned into reality. So I was very excited about that. And it just turned out 100 times more beautiful than I had even thought it would. So I was really happy about that. And people really liked them. So this is, you're working on it. You've got beads all over the place. You can't go around your house without, beads flying everywhere and pieces of thread. But it's beautiful, colorful, shiny, exciting work. For those of you who paint or work with color, you'll know what I'm talking about. It's fun to look at all of that stuff, to have it out. And so, well, I guess we put that in here. Okay, well, we're going to show you Sharon Kavanagh. This is about when I learned how to do beadwork. I was teaching a workshop up in this small town called Burwash Landing in the Yukon, and I was working with a group of people in a First Nation, and they were doing a conflict management training program. So I was up there doing that. So I finished teaching, and this woman, Sharon, was in the class. And I was about to leave, and it's about 4 hours away from Whitehorse or something like that. And it's Friday night, and it's 4 or 5 o'clock or something, and I'm getting ready to go on the road, and she said, well, you should stop at my house before you go home. And I'm thinking, really? Like, got a long way to go home, and kids and a life and all of this. Anyway, she said, well, no, you should come over and have tea. And she said, I want to teach you how to do beadwork. And I said, really? I said, well, maybe we should do it another time. No, she said, I've known that you wanted to learn how to do this for a long time. And here you are, and we might as well. And honestly, I didn't know how to say no, so I went along with her. We had a cup of tea. She's showing me many things, including teaching me how to do beadwork. And she gave me a traditional pattern from her family, a beautiful rose pattern. She gave me the materials to make a little jewelry case out of felt, and then to do a big wild rose on the top of it, which my daughter has to this day. And it was, it was like 9 o'clock at night, and I know how to bead. I've got needles, I've got beads, I've got patterns, I've got the felt, and I've started this project, and off I go back to Whitehorse, and it was kind of like, okay, great. So that's how I first learned to do beadwork. And then I took a class with this other young woman, Heather Dixon, and what do I do with that? She makes these. She has a business, and she makes these incredible headbands. She's part of the Tagish Carcross First Nation from Carcross, Yukon. And I'll pass this around if you want to have a look at it. And it's, she's used beads from old beads that came from Venice like hundreds of years ago, and incorporated them, and does this beautiful work, and learned to pleat and use these granny scarves, they call them in the Yukon. I don't know if they call them that here. But anyway, it's she's got this huge business online and for ceremonial and uses, and people use them as part of their regalia now, and she sells them all over the world. And it's just fantastic. And she gave a workshop once when she wasn't so famous, and and taught us how to do some of this beadwork, especially making these little flowers. And we made our own little headbands, which were nothing like that. But anyway, and that's all the experience I've had getting taught how to do beadwork. Other than that, I've just practiced it and, get a little better over time. And anyway, there's lots of beaders who are much more expert than I am, for sure, and I would like to become better. And that's a photograph, just an example of a Tlingit woman in her regalia. It's just a picture that I beaded of her hat, but anyway. Yeah, and this picture, I put this picture on the side, didn't include it in the show because I've given it to a friend of mine in Winnipeg. And when I looked at the pictures, I was thinking, why didn't some of them work very well? You know, some of them you do it and you love it, and these ones I love. Ones that maybe didn't work out so well, or you look at it and you think, I don't know, I didn't quite get that right. And you think, why not? And this was one I thought I didn't quite get it right. When I looked at it on the slide, or when I looked at pictures of it, I thought, no.
Just point out where the beads are on it, Pat, it's hard to see.
Oh, okay, yeah. So this one, oh, okay. There's beads along here. This is purple beads kind of along here on the railing of the fence.
Oh, you can see it?
Oops,
Yeah,
sorry,
the-
lost it.
The arrows. Oh, okay,
Huh?
I got it. Okay, yeah. It was hiding behind this post.
Oh, okay.
So I thought
Okay,
you were doing
okay.
something on your computer that nobody could see.
Oh, yeah, they can't see the arrow, yeah.
Okay.
So I did bead along this stalk of this tulip, and I beaded around some of the red tulips here and here, and around this one. And I looked at this just 2 nights ago in Winnipeg, because when I looked at it in real life, I really like it. And my friend who has it really likes it. And I said, okay, good, because I was going to use it as an example of one that I would do differently again. And I think if I did it again, I wouldn't put the green up the stalk, because it doesn't, in my mind, it doesn't actually add as much as I hoped it would. But I would do more beading on the flowers, because that's what I want to stand out. I don't want the stalk to stand out, I want the flowers to stand out. And I think the purple is dramatic. Actually, in the picture it looks great. It really catches the light, and it contains the flowers. It's almost like a flower box.
Could you temporarily turn the other light off, just so we can see that a bit better?
Mhm.
And then it makes sense what you were saying.
Yeah. Yeah, good.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So, which details do you choose? So you look at this picture, the pelicans down in the Waterhen River in the Interlake. I have a cabin down there, and this is a view from my front yard and deck, and you know, the pelicans, sometimes there's lots of them floating by all at once. Well, what are you going to focus on? We're always thinking about that, like what's important in the picture? What do you want to emphasize? And you know, when you look at that, and here's a question for you, like what would you want to emphasize in that picture? Anybody?
The wings of that one bird landing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the beaks. The orange contrasts really well with the rest of the
Okay.
photo.
Or the shoreline on the back shoreline.
Yeah, a lot of different ways you could go with it, right? So if you were beating this picture, you might choose any one of those options, and then you can see what happens with it. For me, I was attracted to the reflection of the pelicans in the water, and the pelicans there. So I beat it along where the reflection and the pelican met. Okay, so this is a picture that I took in Bahrain. It's a bunch of Arab women with their children down at the beach. To me, it was a fascinating picture, and really being a person who grew up on a beach and loves swimming and everything, you know, beaches are great. And when you think of women and their kids at the beach, you don't usually think of the full habaya and people wearing the headscarf and all of that kind of stuff. The first time that I beaded this picture, I beaded along here with the colors of the sand and the sea, and then I turned to black beads or dark purple or something, and I beaded across the women, and And when I finished it, I actually hung it in a show, in my first show of these in 2016 or 17, and my brother-in-law came and looked at it and he said, "Oh, that's terrible, you shouldn't have done that. You know, you shouldn't have beat it across those women, it looks weird." And I looked at it and I said, "It does. It really looked weird." It chopped it up. And so I took those beads out and I redid it this way. And I'm really happy with it now. But, you know, you learn that as you go along. Okay, so I'll just set this over here. But here's it, you know, you've always got a choice. What do you want somebody looking at the photograph to look at? You know, and if you look at any one of the pictures and think, okay, and you can ask yourself, well, why did she want me to look at that? And there'll be some reason. You may not be able to figure it out, but anyway, it's just something to think about. And those of you taking the workshop tomorrow or the following Saturday will have a chance to decide for yourself what do you want to emphasize in that picture, because we've got a choice of about 5 different small pictures that you're going to bead yourself, and you're going to make those kind of artistic choices of what you're going to focus on. You know, which colors are you going to draw out? How many beads are you going to put on? I've done some pictures and I went way too far with them. And I thought, no, you should have stopped way back. And kind of the less is more philosophy of art. So which photos should you choose? You know, all those of us who do photography, we've got 80,000 photographs on our computers. You know, we have, and a lot of them we really love and we think are good photographs. So why would we choose one over the other? And there's a few in this exhibition which are a bit experimental because I didn't know. For example, up here there's one of this was a rafting trip that I took this summer, or last summer, this one up here. And these were just the tents in one of our campsites one night that I want to try it and see how does that look. Usually I pick something that's got a lot of very strong lines because, you know, the beads go on nice and neatly with when you've got lines, or they, you know, this one here, the canyon in Sicily, you know, really, I find really draws you into the canyon, like it just...
more 3D.
It's more 3D, exactly. And when you have these hung in where the natural light gets at it, or they're lit, you know, in certain ways, they really, the beads, some of the beads really shine. And some of the beads that I use are Swarovski crystals. They're really shine. And, you know, you can get shinier beads or matte beads or all different kind of beads, which I collect from wherever I can. Okay, so here's a little questionnaire for you about which would work better. We've got, you know, to me this is I love this picture. This is near Whitehorse. It's a Kluane Range. It's a World Heritage Park. These mountains are amazing, and it's just the lines in it. I thought that would be great. So I took I went out there one day just taking pictures of different mountains and glaciers and creeks and rivers and things like that. So here's a couple of examples, and this is something for you to just, you know, let's talk about it. Which of these pictures would you rather be?
The one on the right,
Colored one.
Okay, and why?
because it's got green on it.
It's got what?
It's got green on it.
Oh.
From the trees. So, like, if I was doing it, I'd do the 2 swooping lines of gray at the very top where the mountain kind of comes together. And then I'd also do some more swoop, kind of pointed lines going up like that and that with green, and then I have a line of blue at the bottom where the line is, where it connects to the water.
Yeah, the turquoise of the lake.
Yeah.
I'd pick the other one,
Okay, well, why would you pick the other one?
because it has these interesting vertical white lines. Like of
Oh
the
yeah, those
snow.
would be fun to do too.
And just to the angle of how the light is, you know, the light in the photography, that would be, you know, often when you look at snow in the sunlight, it sort of is shiny, so.
Anyone else? Which one would you pick?
Do you ever like introduce another color into your photograph, like a color that's not there?
Your goat one had different colors, didn't it?
My goat one? The sheep?
You know, aren't those goats over in that one over there
Sheep.
with the blue?
Are they goats? No, they're sheep, aren't they?
I thought they were sheep, but they could be goats.
Okay, Jan, are they?
They look like bald sheep.
Oh, they are.
Bald sheep?
Yeah.
I could have sworn they were sheep. You scared me there, Bart.
But did they have blue around their necks, or did you put those on?
Yes, they had a tag, a blue tag around their necks. That color was there. Yeah, I didn't make that up. I have not introduced a color that I didn't see there.
Yeah.
And I know those of you who paint will know that, you know, clouds are not white.
Yeah.
You know, they look white, kind of, but when you actually get into them, they're mauve and blue and green and gray and, well, there are a million colors. And so that's the challenge of picking the beads to me. But, you know, that would be another something completely else to do, a totally different color.
Yeah, I
That
guess
isn't
whether
there.
you're underlining what's there, you know, whether your beads support what's already there,
Yeah.
or whether the beads become their own thing, I guess, in some way.
Well, and they kind of did in this, was that, what kind of painting? Was that watercolor? No, what?
Last night?
Yeah, that you showed me last night. Was an indigenous artist it's a show on,
Well, landscape artist of the year.
yeah, it's a
Oh, right.
competition show. Yeah, and this artist, a young indigenous woman, she was in the finals, and her picture had, her beads were not following the natural colors. They were like
Really
gold,
bright.
coppery color of beads that she did a stylized tree with them. It wasn't me. I try to find the exact color in my beads, and I'll go, you know, sifting through hundreds of beads to try to find the right color. And if any of you ever get into doing this kind of beadwork on photography, you're going to find yourself, you know, scouring wherever you can to find different colors and shapes and sizes of beads. And
Well, and opaque and crystalline,
Exactly,
right? Like they're
yeah.
so wild.
yeah,
differences.
yeah, yeah. And we have, for the workshops, I made up a package of beads that I think includes like a lot of different colors that people can choose from to create the impact they want on the pictures. Or I have other beads. If they don't like what I picked, they can swap them with somebody else, or they can, who's doing a different picture, or they can take other beads, or you can fool around and do whatever you like with it. Let's try this new idea out and see what it's like.
Well, I'm kind of looking I've seen the workshop pictures you have, and there's one there where it has a lot of white and gray, and I thought, geez, what if you brought pink into that, or purple? But it's not there in the photo, which is why I asked that question about, you know, do you ever, you know, do something like that?
Wild and crazy like that.
You know, I don't think so, but I don't know. You're going to have to look and tell me. I don't think
well,
so.
yeah, and
It's,
it
I don't
may not
do it
work,
consciously.
like,
I
right?
don't think so.
Yeah.
No. But I usually, when I order the pictures on canvas, because I have to order them from a way we are starting to be able to get that done in Whitehorse, but we can't really get it done locally yet, reliably. And so when I get a picture, that's hard to decide, first of all, which picture you're gonna choose. And you choose one, and then I have it hanging on my wall for a long time, figuring, where am I gonna beat it, and how am I gonna do it, and how much, and all of that kind of stuff. And then I kind of, prepare it, and then when I'm ready, then I sit down, and usually for one of these pictures might take 3 or 4 hours to do the beadwork on it, so. That's just my process. Other people could be much faster at making up their mind about things, but. Okay, so here's another set for you to compare. Which one do you think would work better, beat it, or which one would you want to do and why? It's kind of this, in a way, the same place, photographed at different depths of field and different,
I would do the left, because I like the winding water, I think that is.
Okay, yeah, it's a little creek coming down. Yeah.
One on the right shows the movement of the water. That could be highlighted.
Yeah, couldn't
you
you
could
go
really see
crazy
the
with
rapids
that?
in
Eh?
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even in the rocks in the foreground, right? You could be picking up in the darks on those wet rocks in the foreground.
Yeah.
On the one on the right, yeah.
Yeah, there's one over there in
Don't
the.
drop it.
I don't want to know one.
What that section is over there. Sorry about this. There's a picture of the caribou standing in the river, and that was from the same rafting trip I took last summer. And that caribou just stood there posing for like half an hour. We finally had to, go by and leave him there. But, choosing what to focus on in that picture, that you'll see where I made my choices if you look at that carefully after.
Oh, it must have been one of those Parks Canada caribou.
You would think so. Like a statue, you mean?
Oh, it's 11 o'clock. All right, I gotta go stand out there.
Oh, yeah. Well, this was on day 3 of a 12-day paddling rafting trip.
Wonderful.
It was, we had to drive for 4.5 hours from Whitehorse and then fly in an hour and a half to the headwaters. Yeah, and I was the second youngest of 5 women on this trip with these 2 young guides.
Whoa.
It was really awesome. If you ever want a wonderful adventure, come to the Yukon and go rafting on the Snake River. Just
Okay, I'll
a
write that down.
plug for Tourism Yukon.
Too young.
And,
Wait a couple years.
right, so, yes, you can focus on the water, you can focus on the rocks, you can focus on the curve, you can focus on the trees, you can focus on the glaciers, and whatever, wherever you decide to make your beads makes a statement about the picture. And it also, one of the pictures that I did early on, I did the line that was a very far away part of the picture. And it actually kind of distorted the perspective to me when it was finished. It pulled the background into the foreground. So we want to try to figure out what do we want in the foreground, not just the focus of attention, but also in the foreground physically. So these are just all like really interesting parts of it, I think, to figure out, and what makes each person doing it, they create their own picture. They're never going to be two the same. Okay, now do you want to hear a little bit about the wearable art stuff? Okay, so the wearable art was something I came into fairly recently. A friend of mine who worked at she manages the Yukon Trappers Association, and she also has a wool store. So I learned to spin with a hand spindle, which is, does anyone here spin?
Not yet.
Nobody.
Not yet.
Not yet, okay. Well, I learned to spin on this little hand spindle, and that's all I have. That's all I do. I have tried to learn the spinning wheel a couple of times, and I'm no good at it. Yeah, I can't figure it out. I'm not that well enough coordinated to have my feet and hands going at the same time. I don't know. I did find an electric one the other day that's
Oh.
amazing.
We have a couple of people in the community who
Yeah.
do, like Karen
Karen
Evans and
Evans in Denver
Selma
Beach.
Pinola
Oh, yeah,
in Crumbury, yeah. But
yeah.
it's not a, it's, those are the only two that
No,
come to
there's,
mind, actually.
I'm just trying to think of the name of it, Denver Beach.
Yeah, there's another girl.
Yeah,
About Sarah Trevor's house.
yeah.
Oh, right,
Yes.
yes.
And she does a lot of wool, raw wool, and
Mhm.
it's beautiful.
Yeah. So it's very addicting, like a lot of art activities and hobbies can be, crafts can be. You know, you start with the sheep. These are some sheep that wander around my daughter's yard. They belong to her neighbor who has sheep and pigs and whatnot, but my daughter Shannon has these visitors every day. And I usually buy it when it's in the form of bats, like this. This is a bunch I bought from a shepherd down near Kleefeld. And this is some like raw or bats of yak wool. And these are like just a really curly parts of a
Santa Claus's beard.
Santa Claus's beard, right? That kind of sheep.
I didn't know you get that up for knitting, really?
Catch 'em.
Yeah, so it goes from
Cool
the,
guy.
you know, some people, they wash and clean and card the wool to get it to this point. And this is, aside from a little bit of kiviot that, again, my daughter Shannon brought me back from the Arctic when she was working up there one summer. I have never carded anything or done it right from the fleece to this point. I start here. And then with my hand spindle, I start creating skeins of wool, like these ones, or silk, as in this case. And there's a bunch of Shetland wool. You can come and look at it over here. That's from that woman near Kleefeld, the shepherd that I mentioned. Yeah, she does beautiful stuff. And then I spin it into different kinds of yarns and put it on a stump out by the Yukon River to take a picture of it for my website and enjoy all the colors and the textures. It's beautiful to work with. It's full of lanolin and it makes your hands soft, and you know it's just spinning is you sit here and you spin the yarn. It just puts you into a trance, and it's the same thing over and over again. You don't have to think about it, and next thing you know, you've got all this beautiful yarn. So spinning all this beautiful yarn and thinking, what am I going to do with it? And then I started knitting it into toques and headbands and neck warmers and you know, mitts and other stuff. And then this friend who runs the Trappers Association and has the wool shop, and where I go to hang out and have a cup of tea and talk about wool and fur and stuff like that. They were having a fur sale at the Trappers Association. And she said, I really should be making some fur things to have out on the craft table and, you know, showing what can be done with the fur. So I said, yeah, that's a good idea. That sounds like fun. And said, you know, what do you want to do? How do you want to make stuff? And she said, well, I don't know. We have to figure it out. So we started figuring it out. And the first thing we figured out actually was a beaver collar, like something like this. And I made it to go with this vest I had knitted for myself that I really liked the vest, but it was a bit too plain for me when it was finished. I don't know, it needed something. And I thought, okay, let's make a fur collar for this vest. So we made a paper pattern. She had a beaver fur, so we cut it out on the pattern, and then I sewed the lining into it, just like I did with this one. And I thought, wow, that's great. That's fantastic. And it was a bit sloppy, and, you know, the sewing wasn't that great, but anyway, we were really happy with it. So we said, okay, we're going to make a bunch of these things, and Then we're gonna figure out how to make a headband, cause I had always I had a fox headband for 20 years that I loved and wore every winter. We're gonna use that as a pattern and make headbands, and, well, it's in my coat. I wear it to this day. Anyway, she had this beautiful turquoise blue dyed fox fur from the Winnipeg Exchange. And so we started making some things. I'd made a few things. Her husband had a stroke. She was out of commission. They had to go down to Vancouver for months. And fur show was coming up and she couldn't do anything. So I had to sew like a crazy person to have something on this table. So that's how I really started to work with fur as well. And then, these are some of the, just pictures of some of the fur things that I've made that has been at different fur shows up in Dawson City, and we have one twice a year in Whitehorse, and got to know the trappers and would get the furs, you know, just get the furs from them, and, you know, chase around to find, you know, that's a cross fox, the lynx and the Arctic fox, and then some of the dyed ones that are just funky, and a lot of younger people like the dyed. I don't dye it.
Oh.
No, we buy it, they
Sorry.
dye it at, I don't know where they do it, in Winnipeg, I think.
Oh, okay.
But the Yukon trappers send their furs out to Winnipeg to get tanned, because they have the best tannery there, and most affordable tannery.
Oh,
So
who
they
knew?
ship their furs out, and they're tanned in Winnipeg, and then, well, there are some people who tan furs in Whitehorse, but people do it for themselves. If they tan it themselves, they'll never sell it to anyone. They'll use it themselves. Or there's one guy there who has a shop and does tanning for other people, but he takes forever, and he can't keep up. He can't keep up. Pardon?
You just can't keep up with the volume.
No, and you couldn't have it in time to, if you needed to get some pieces ready for a show, you can't. And yeah, so the Trappers Association brings in furs that we don't have. You know, there's furs that we don't have in the Yukon. We don't have certain animals up there, and yeah. Okay. Yeah, so these are just some pictures of some of the different ones that I've made over the years. This was part of a fashion show in Dawson City. At the first show I went up there. This young girl was modeling some pieces and just looked stunning. And this guy is our premier, Sandy Silver, and he's from Dawson City. That was his constituency. So he came by and he picked the furs that he wanted to model, and he was in the fashion show, and it was very cool. And this is just backstage as his people are getting him ready. My daughter Shannon, who some of you know, modeling for me a couple of pieces. And this was just a young woman who took a picture of her at the Yukon Trappers Association first show. It's another picture of all of that. And this piece was custom made for a woman who was getting married. She was our minister of tourism, and she was getting married, and one of her people in her bridal party needed a fur piece with the rest of her regalia. She's a First Nation woman, and she came, and this was her design, and had the beads and the pom-pom and everything, so I made that to her specs. And then this was another commission from, she's a physiotherapist that was having a winter wedding out Marsh Lake in the Yukon, and she wanted me to make her a Arctic fur piece for her wedding, and also for her 3 daughters. So they were her wedding party.